Let's see if anybody here has a question. Does anybody here have a question?
Yeah, I got a question for you.
Don't clap for him. What is it?
When are you going to get back to doing the good shit?
You make a good point.
Simple question.
Wait, hold on. You're here.
Yeah.
You got a ticket, so you're a fan. What are you talking about? The good.
I was a fan. Not much of a fan anymore, and I got the tickets just to do this, what I'm doing now. Yeah.
All right. Well, all right. So what? You don't like that I'm not doing what?
Go back to the old shit. This seems like a cash grab.
It's not a cash grab.
It's a cash grab, Tim.
No, that's not nice. So what do you like? You like Tim and Eric? That's your thing? Like awesome shows that's what you want me to be doing?
I don't like Tim and Eric. Older than that. Tim and Eric seems like a cash grab.
No, it's not a cash grab.
Tom goes.
What do you
Tim
mean?
and Eric's a cash grab.
Wait.
It's mainstream. It's for jocks.
So shut up.
Right?
So wait.
This guy's greedy.
Wait. You don't.
Hi, everybody. My name's Andy. You're listening to an episode of Lucky Paper Radio, and I'm here as always with my co-host, Anthony, designer of the best cubes for children, Maddox.
What happened? I don't know what you're talking about.
We played the regular cube on Tuesday. It was great. You weren't there. You were off having birthday dinner.
Rare time that I've missed a cube night.
I think, honestly, some of the core crew is starting to miss more nights, which I think is not a bad thing.
I think it's okay.
It's just people recognizing that they don't have to be there every night, and it'll keep happening. It's not going to die without them. But yeah, you were off at a dinner. I took your cube from you so we could play the regular cube because it was requested. And Rowan, our local 11-year-old.
Local child.
Pulled down the 3-0, his first ever 3-0 at Cube Night, which was very thrilling.
Incredible.
Now, it was a team draft. I was on his team, and I did help substantially with deck building.
That's what a team draft is for.
Of course,
we talk about why team drafting is great, especially for like exchange of knowledge, like learning how somebody else would build your pool.
I was on the team, and I only went 2-1. So, like, obviously,
that's
all,
proof.
All credit to Rowan. He ended up drafting like kind of a Mardu Artifacts Matter deck, but didn't take any fixing lands, which is maybe something I should have a little chat with Rowan about. So we ended up...
Next time Rowan's on my team, we're going to have a little chat about fixing lands.
Not passing lands. We ended up just playing a mono white, actually, which rarely happens in the regular cube, I dare say. How often do you see a mono white deck in the regular cube?
Pretty rarely.
Yeah, I was a little worried. We were definitely playing a couple cards that were really not at their best. We were playing Phyrexian Missionary with no black, so just a 2-mana, 2/3 lifelink. That card honestly fully carried as a 2-mana, 2/3 lifelink.
In the regular cube, a 2-mana, 2/3 lifelink is kind of
Well, our deck had a ton of equipment in it too, so it was really good for that reason alone. We also had Haywire Might with no green, just because it was an artifact to trigger all the various artifact matter stuff, and it gains your life when it dies.
Yeah, sure.
So those were the two cards that were most sus, but trying to splash anything on just basics alone was not going to be great. It was a real thrill. It was fully the highlight of my evening was getting to like help him get to a 3-0 and see him so excited about it. It was really cool. I think you'll really appreciate my favorite sequence of the night, which was how he won the very last match, which was Metallic Mimic on turn 2 into what is the rabbit with kicker? Is it a rabbit?
Ooh,
mouse?
the rabbit.
It's
the
a
mouse with kicker. It's got a little
Offspring.
sword,
It's got Offspring.
and I can picture the card perfectly, and somehow I can't remember what it's called.
It's a
even though
1/2 with
in...
Valiant that when you target
Yeah.
it, all mice get +1/+1 till end of turn. So the sequence was Metallic Mimic into
Flowerfoot Swordmaster.
into Offspring cast Flowerfoot Swordmaster, and obviously the Metallic Mimic named Mouse. I think I should name Soldier actually, because Soldier is more
that's
generic.
perfect.
A little bit of my influence there as the teammate. Like, name Soldier. Maybe you have other soldiers in your deck. I doubt you have other mice. Put 2 counters on it, then untap and play Sentinel's Eyes on one of those things, triggering to puff all of the mice, including all the soldiers, including the Metallic Mimic, and just bash for lethal. It was very sick. Very sick little sequence.
I mean, the regular cube is all about just the like little bit of value Metallic Mimic. That's really what this.
That was a ton of value. What are you talking about? That was a 2-mana 2/1 that puts 2 +1/+1 counters on your creatures and then gets buffed later. That's crazy.
For sure, you got to evaluate it on that rate, though. It's not like the kind of cube where you're like, oh, I'm just drafting only elves, and this is just going to name elves, and it's just going to be the pure 100% creature type matters thing.
That's what that card is in anybody's cube.
Okay, great. Never mind.
I think it always buffs the next couple creature spells you cast.
It's exactly the way it is here as everywhere else.
I think honestly it is. I think the most useful case for that is like a humans deck probably. And you don't have any other humans matters payoff, but you have a ton of humans. Like you could definitely just have the same density of humans in your deck in this cube as you could in a deck in a cube that supports like Thalia's Lieutenant or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really sick. Regular cube remains one of my favorite cubes to play. Had a great time. And Rowan carried the team. Brought us a victory. It was actually really funny because we brought the cube specifically because Playgroup member had a friend in from out of town who is a Magic player but has not drafted much, and they were like, regular cube would be great for this person, and we all agreed, brought it out for him, and he 0-3'd and Rowan 3-0'd, and so he was in his like early 40s, and he was like, look at this kid go. And Rowan was in classic Rowan fashion being like, oh, you lost?
He's been practicing. He's working hard.
Yeah, really exciting stuff. We're late on this, Anthony, for a variety of reasons, but it is, round about the time of year. I think August is when Mark Rosewater always puts out his State of Design article for the year. We usually spend an episode of the podcast every year talking about Mark Rosewater's State of Design article because we are interested in Magic card design. And I think it's also fascinating to get a little bit of perspective on the game from Mark Rosewater's angle, which is obviously way more holistic than our investment in the game, because more and more you and I are really kind of minimally invested in Magic at large. I have no idea what's going on in Standard. I haven't played Retail Limited in years. I don't play any Constructed of any kind. So we get to hear a combination of reflections on game design and also perspective on the game as a whole from Mark Rosewater's article.
I'm curious because this article is always sort of follows a similar structure where he just walks through set by set, specifically all the draftable sets, because there's a lot of supplemental products that come out now. It would be just an insane article if he tried to cover literally everything.
Only as of the past 2 years, though. All years prior, he covered everything.
Oh, really? Is that true?
Yeah.
Oh. Neat.
There's just too much Magic now.
There's too much Magic now. So he's talking like set by set through everything that came out over the past year. How much, like, reading through this, do you feel, like, engaged in these sets? Like, are you familiar with a lot of the mechanics and what's happening here? Or is it just, like, reading this sort of expose on game design kind of from scratch?
I'm familiar enough with the mechanics just because almost every set has a card or two for one of my cubes. And so I'm usually familiar with the mechanics either because I have sort of written them off whole cloth in the form of, like, start your engines or rooms, or because some cards are in my cubes and therefore I play with them and know what the mechanics are. I know the mechanics, generally speaking.
Yeah, I thought it was sort of funny. I felt like much more familiar with the older sets, and I think a lot of that comes from the fact that the way that I've been engaging with new sets is similar to you. I've missed the last couple pre-releases.
Real quick, when you say older sets, you mean older sets within the last year?
Within this chunk. But, there's still a lot of osmosis of conversations happening around the cube space and individual cards that come up and get played in cubes. So I do see cards occasionally, but it feels like, the sets that have been around for a year have had more time for individual cards to come up in other people's cubes that I've played. So it's like, I've seen a couple of these things. And I think maybe the sort of cube community has had more time to sort of digest them. So it's I feel like we are still somewhat engaged, but it's maybe there's just a bit more of a lag time than if you were, going to the pre-release or like playing Standard.
Yeah, with the one big caveat that I couldn't tell you the mechanics of Final Fantasy off the top of my head. I have no clue. I probably recognize some of them. The one where you can make
one is
Job
called
Select.
Job Select because I drafted a card that didn't have any reminder text on it a couple weeks ago, and I'm just like, so, buddy, cube owner, what is this? What is this mechanic?
It's a weirdly named mechanic. Like that one gets a weird name because of the connection to the third-party IP too. Like they would never have named it that in a million years.
No, it doesn't make any sense.
It was,
I'm like, so it's just living weapon, but a 1/1, right? Is that what it is?
Yeah, but it's got a specific creature type. I forget what it is.
Sure, whatever.
Human. I think you get to pick the creature type, maybe, because that's the part of the select.
Or that's the job?
Maybe. Again, this is a set I know nothing about because I am pretty disengaged with Universes Beyond stuff. So, yeah, the Duskborn mechanics, the Tarkir Dragonstorm mechanics, the Aetherdrift mechanics. I know that stuff, but I do not know Final Fantasy. And looking forward to what will be next year's State of Design article. It's going to be half or more about Universes Beyond sets because between Spider-Man and Airbender and now Star Trek has been announced, which...
Star Trek. I think, it'll be interesting talking about Star Trek next year because I think we'll both have strong feelings in some direction.
It's funny because, I'm sure this is not their intended response, but I am way less happy when it's an IP that I care about than when it's an IP I don't give any crap about. Like, I've never watched any of the Avatar stuff, whatever. I don't care. You're making an Avatar set, fine. I feel like I'm actually more likely to play an Avatar card in a cube than I am, like,
Jean-Luc Picard.
or, the crystalline entity or whatever. And I am obsessed with Star Trek The Next Generation. I've watched the entire thing all the way through, probably 3 or 4 times at this point, and I really just love it. And the fact that they're going to make Jean-Luc Picard into a Magic card is really... I'm not happy about it. That's for next year, though. My point is that there was some criticism of this article in that he kind of glossed over some of the other Universes Beyond stuff. He didn't address Assassin's Creed, which was, I think, a pretty unpopular product. And then he also didn't address any of the Universes Beyond Secret Layers, some of which had a lot of mechanically unique cards, which is effectively designed. But he kind of glossed over that and just focused on the one Universes Beyond thing, which was the most successful product in the history of Magic of all time, which was Final Fantasy, which beat all sales records before it even was released.
Isn't that like every set now?
No.
They're just like twice a year. They're like, oh, Lord of the Rings is the most popular thing. Now Final Fantasy's the new.
Those are the 2 ones.
Okay, those are the 2?
Yeah.
It's just those 2.
Yeah, those are the 2. Lord of the Rings, as I understand it, crushed all previous sales records by a big margin, and then Final Fantasy crushed Lord of the Rings by a big margin. And I still don't really fully understand how that happens, because that was before release. It was literally before release weekend.
Is it like the New York Times bestseller, where it's not about how much they're selling to consumers, it's about the store owners and things that are speculating about the prices or how much they're going to sell, which is they probably have a good sense of that, so it's not like it is untrue.
How do they have a good sense of that is my question.
I don't know.
Were those sales numbers purely based on WPN store members purchasing of product based on their gut read of the popularity of the set based on spoilers and just what the vibe was in the room?
Just to say how much I don't know about that, there's got to be a whole world of podcasts that are just about Magic finance that could answer this question with a whole bunch of other details, right?
Rudy, go on Lucky Paper Radio.
Oh no.
We will never have Rudy on. I don't fully understand how it became the best-selling set before it was even on sale, but it did. Honestly, the sort of big takeaway from Mark Rosewater of last year is that it was great. Magic was at its best, the design was at its best, the game was more popular than ever, and everything is great, and it's going to be great forever. Which I feel feels alienating to me, because that is not how I feel about the last year in Magic. But that's why it's interesting to read Mark Rosewater's perspective, because he's got obviously a lot more information than I do at my fingertips. I'm in a little tiny niche corner of this world, and he's looking at the whole big picture, which is also getting bigger and bigger. The picture continues to grow, and I'm still just one guy.
Just to use his own words, he said about the last year in Magic, I believe it was excellent. Some of the best design we've ever done. And yeah, looking at the numbers, looking at the way that they are selling cards and getting new players into the game, it does seem like it's been a very successful year.
Seems like objectively it was an excellent year for Magic as a product.
Yeah, I think that's a really valuable distinction, because for me as a player, it's and again, it's how much is the nostalgia's maybe not quite the right word, but expectations. We came into the game when it had a certain rhythm to it, and that rhythm is no longer present. So it feels like there has been a big shift in the game that is largely a loss. It's limited doesn't really exist in the same way, and paper play doesn't really exist in the same way. As
limited
we were
is really big right now, for what it's worth.
Is it? Are local game stores
if you look
firing?
at his set review, he talks barely at all about Commander, and he talks about Limited extensively. I think Limited is a really big part of Magic right now, and also I do think Limited design is at its peak probably. I think they've gotten really, really good at designing for Limited, and most sets, Spider-Man notwithstanding, which I'm hearing a lot of grumbling about, most sets are excellent Limited sets by everyone's sort of reckoning.
Can I correct my question? Is Limited in paper still something that's happening?
That I have no idea about. Our local retail Limited scene died with COVID, but that is one little tiny store in one city that, frankly, if we were not so invested in Cube, we might have been able to keep that scene alive. If we had been,
that's a good point.
If literally you and I,
we killed Limited.
We might have been a big part of killing Limited at No Land Beyond in Baltimore, Maryland. If you and I had invested the same amount of energy, or even half the amount of energy we invested in starting a Cube community in just running retail Limited drafts at No Land Beyond, I think we would still have a Limited scene the same way we did before COVID.
Wow.
Which was to say, a pod and a half would fire on Fridays, maybe 2.
But deep into a set. It wasn't the first 2 weeks of a new set. It was pretty far into it.
That's what we did most weeks before COVID, was play retail Limited. I would suspect that probably there was some loss just because I think COVID changed the reality on the ground for a lot of local game stores, and probably they never bounced back and sort of are running in-person events at the same magnitude. But I would guess that pound for pound, paper Limited is not fallen off dramatically in the past 5 years. I would bet it's probably doing just fine.
Interesting. Okay. That's why it's helpful to get this bigger perspective.
It's interesting to me that he talks less and less about Commander in these set reviews. We addressed on the show I think it was 3 years ago now, there was that one state of design that literally
Had the word commander like 30
93
times.
times or something. It was just commander, 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 commander. It had no other mention of any other Eternal formats or anything. It was just talking about commander the entire time. Now I think that's just taken as read. Like, I think it's just the
that's what I was going to say.
assumed...
Is like that's now the baseline. So like he does talk about it a lot, but from the perspective of like, oh, like there were some challenges with the creature types because it was hard to make 100 card singleton deck out of this creature type.
Yes.
And it's like, yeah, so it's just like the baseline is commander is what most people are playing.
It's just the background radiation, I think, of the game now. I also think that maybe they have started to realize their R&D energy was focused on making multiplayer cards and cards for Commander like a laser beam for a couple years there. And honestly, my sort of gut feeling from the outside is that that laser beam has now been pointed at Universes Beyond. And I think it is way more important to them to make Universes Beyond products that sell well, that resonate with the core material, that bring in players from outside the game that are otherwise big fans of Final Fantasy or whatever. That, to me, feels like what the focus of R&D is right now, like in a big, abstract sense. And I don't feel the same, like, we're just making cards for Commander in every set, and every card is for Commander. I just feels like that's not as much the focus anymore. And maybe it's because they realize it doesn't have to be. Like, Commander became the most popular format without them paying any attention to it. And so they don't have to actually pay that much attention to it for it to continue to be a way to sell a ton of Magic cards.
I think that's a really great way to frame it. And now that you've put it that way, that makes a lot of sense. So many of the new sets, they do feel like they are catering to this audience of people that are maybe buying Magic cards for the first time, or they're going to buy a couple booster packs and then maybe play them, maybe not. And so I feel like the way that manifests from a design perspective is I think we do see a lot of cards that they are deliberately trying to make things that are both simple and resonant to that source material that they're portraying. So we have stuff like Job Select, which is a pretty simple mechanic that we've seen many sort of versions of. It's very confusing to me, a person who hasn't seen these words, and the words don't have a resonance for me as somebody that hasn't played Final Fantasy games. But that is interesting how it has sort of come around sort of full circle in a way to, yeah, they are prioritizing designing some simple mechanics.
We agree that it's been a good year for Magic as a product, I think. It's kind of hard to argue with that. Though I will say that there's something about looking at the long life of the product versus the short-term life of the product. Like, you definitely can't argue in any sense that, like, this past year wasn't great for Magic in the short term, right? These sets sold a ton, made a bunch of money for what was the cosin for Hasbro, and that is the goal of any for-profit product under our sort of current system of incentives. So, like, in that sense, you can't argue that it was great. I do think that
it wasn't great.
That it was, yeah, everyone got what I was saying. We all agree that that's inarguably, like, they met those goals.
Sure.
I do think there is something to the idea of looking at not the short-term health of the game or even success as a product, but the long-term success as a product. And, you know, I hear from people, I saw at the Final Fantasy pre-release, which I did attend, that there were a bunch of people there that were like, yeah, I haven't played Magic in 12 years, but I love Final Fantasy, and so I saw they're doing a Final Fantasy set, so I'm out here trying it, right? I heard from people on the Discord that say that, like, their LGS got, like, rejuvenated because a bunch of players came and started playing Magic there because of Final Fantasy, and they've actually stuck around, and they're, like, actually doing the thing. So, like...
I mean, that's incredible. I think to me, that's a more exciting success than the numbers of how much they sold.
Sure, but I mean, that's how you kind of measure that, you know, more or less, I would imagine. But it seems like, at least from our perspective, that the goal of bringing in these other IPs to, like, make the game bigger has succeeded, at least when it comes to Final Fantasy. My question is, like, is it a success if these new people come in and stay and become Magic players for however long the average person plays Magic? And this is something he's actually mentioned in podcasts in the past, is, like, the average amount of time. Like, if someone gets to the point of Magic where they've, like, gone to one organized event, then they tend to play for, like, 6 years, something insane like that. Like, people tend to stick with the game for the most part. And so if these people end up becoming, you know, repeat players of the game and stick around for a while, at the same time, I've also seen people that are kind of like us that are just like, I just don't do the stuff I did before because this is just part of the game that does not resonate with me. And I'm a long-term Magic player. You and I have been playing for about 10 years now. I played as a kid too. If you add that time on, then I've been playing Magic for a long time. And I feel pushed away by Universes Beyond products, especially the sort of most distasteful ones. Like, making the rounds this past weekend was the Dwight Schrute secret lair from The Office.
I legitimately, I mean, this is part of the situation, but I don't know if things are real.
It's really
I saw
hard
that,
to tell.
I'm just like, oh, is this just a joke somebody made, or is this real? And then my next thought was, actually, I don't even care. It doesn't even matter to me if this is real or not. I'm going to go do something else.
Yeah, I mean, from your perspective, you're never going to engage with it anyway, so it doesn't matter if it's real. Who cares? But yeah, like, that to me is, like, one of, I think, the most distasteful applications of a like third-party IP to the game, and players like us, I guess we're considered old heads at this point. We just got to give up on the idea that there's anything like sacred about Magic that is to be protected, because there's not. Magic is being looted for all it's worth, and if that means putting Dwight Schrute on a bunch of Magic cards or Peter Parker on a million Magic cards, like they're just going to do it, right? And so that's fine. I'm like over that. The game is not sacred or worth protecting in that sense. But I do wonder if it is good for the long-term health of Magic as a product. Let's just start as a product. If some of the sort of longest, most invested players are in fact being pushed away by some of these universes beyond. If you lose, 2 of us and you gain 20 new people that think Final Fantasy is really cool and it brought them into Magic, if you're in charge of, Wizards of the Coast, how do you feel about that trade?
I'm speaking totally speculatively because I'm not any kind of economist or product designer or anything, but it's like, I would not be surprised if the narrative is, hey, we bring in a bunch of people who are excited about Lord of the Rings, and then they play a couple games and then don't stick with the product because they didn't care. Like, they were a Lord of the Rings fan. They played that one set and then that's it. And I could see that narrative where it's like, yeah, the complex and really intense, careful world building that they did for decades.
Got the mosquito.
Congratulations. That's the kind of thing that's going to build players that are going to stick around for 7 years. And these kinds of crossovers are not going to do the same thing. I could be wrong, but that is like a narrative that makes sense to me. And from that perspective, I could see it being risky to prioritize just like get more people into the game, but what are you doing to keep them? Then to speak more to my own personal experience, which I am an expert at, is that true even?
That's a good nickname for next time. Anthony Maddox, expert on his own personal experience.
Many people might tell
According
you that's not
to
true.
his
People
therapist.
do not understand their own perspective. Yeah, I totally agree. It's like I used to be much more excited about Magic, and now if I introduce it to somebody, it's like, oh, like what are they doing? Like what are the new sets about? And it's like, Spider-Man, Spooky House, cute animals. It's like both obviously the crossovers, I find them extremely distasteful. They are not for me. And the in-universe stuff just like also feels more like crossovers because they've gone to these like extreme trope spaces that it also just doesn't feel like this intense, authentic world building anymore.
I want to come back to that, but let's finish this thread on if we are in fact trading a small number of heavily invested longtime players of the game for a bunch of new people that are medium invested or, medianly invested at least, across their sort of pool of people. Is that worth it for the long-term health of the product? And like for me, I don't even know if I have like the moral framework to address the long-term health of the product because I just don't fundamentally believe that like growth is good.
Yeah.
Like to me, if I were like in charge of the metrics for a game that I was in charge of, I mean, and we're in charge of a little tiny little empire here of ours, right? And like the thing that is important to me about our audience and the stuff we make is, frankly, if we had any way to measure it, I'd be more interested in like what people are falling off and for what reasons than how many people are joining on new, right? Like I don't really care how many new listeners we have because that's mostly out of my control. It's like something goes viral on social media or, one of us has a video made about us or, whatever, and we get like an influx of new listeners. That's kind of like just the world at large. I'm not interested in like trying to manufacture those moments intentionally. Like that's a whole job, right? That's what marketing is, right? Is trying to like make that happen in a controlled way.
Our favorite thing, marketing.
Yeah, and clearly I'm interested in like marketing the show. So like given that I'm not interested in that, like that's kind of completely out of my control. What I am curious to know, what I would care about for like, let's just say the health of the podcast is like, all right, people stop listening all the time, right? It's just how things go. Some people just no longer have a commute. They no longer have a time to listen to podcasts, so podcasts are no longer a part of their life. Some people are tired of hearing about us, complain about card complexity, and they just tune out because they'd rather, tune into a podcast that's excited about all the new mechanics or whatever. That's also totally fine. I would want to know why people are no longer listening to the show and like have a read on that. Like, have we become predictable and boring?
Probably, yeah. That's what getting old is.
This is all hypothetical. I actually don't care that much about this. But like, what I'm saying is, as a proxy, is like, if I were Wizards of the Coast, I would be focusing more energy on the people we were losing as a direct consequence of our actions and like design and development than I would be to the people that are coming in the door. And obviously that makes no sense from a business perspective. Like that's why I'm saying I have no moral framework or ethical framework to possibly speak to what would constitute the health of the product in the long term, because I would never make decisions based on that. Like I would be happy to have a game that had 1 million players that everyone loved and to try and like keep those 1 million players invested as reasonably as possible, rather than trying to make it a game with 1 billion players. To grow that million to 10 million or 100 million, right? That would not be a virtue of mine.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe I'm feeling the same thing if I say, like, I'm really frustrated and tired of people saying, like, no, you're wrong. Universes Beyond is great because look how much they're selling. It's like, that is a rubric that I don't care about. That rubric, it sucks. Like, we just see the debasement of culture left and right because people then point to how much money it's making and say that is justification for it. That makes it valid. That makes it valuable in a literal sense. And I'm just like, that sucks. We should make things that are actually like great art and people engage with in a genuine way and inspire powerful experiences and emotions. Like, those are the things that I would like to optimize for. And being told that none of that matters, the only thing that matters is how much money something makes, is part of my great broader just like frustration with the world we live in these days. And, you know, Magic for me for a long time, I mean, still to maybe a lesser degree, was a really important piece of escapism for me. The fact that I could not think about what's going on in the world and instead think about how do I solve this really difficult problem and improve as a player, and a little bit have this window into a little fantasy world, and to then have the way that people are talking about it not about that. It's about like every time people just use the word intellectual property, I'm like, that's gross. Can we stop using the word intellectual property?
Don't you
realize
illegal.
you sound disgusting to me right now? No, they don't. They don't care. They're just happy to make more money. And
Well, to play devil's advocate for a second, like,
literally the devil.
you care about this game. And I think if you were to like say something like that to Mark Rosewater, he would say, like, look, in order for Magic to continue to exist, like, this is what have to happen. Like, maybe it's distasteful to you to talk about, you know, sales or whatever, but if we don't continue to sell this product, we can't continue to design it. We can't afford to continue to like hire people to make artwork and to like continue to make this game. Does that feel real to you at all, or does that just feel like a cop-out?
I mean, it doesn't feel like a cop-out because that is the reality. I feel like I've had this conversation with other friends recently as well, where it's like, oh yeah, I was critical of this thing and you're engaging with it. That's not me being critical of you. I'm critical of the system that like puts you in that position. So sure, if that's what they have to do to keep making Magic, I guess that's fine, but it's going to be, I think, a less valuable, less interesting, like, it's not a great work of art anymore, and that's disappointing.
Okay, so let's talk about that then.
Okay.
Because I think you and I can agree wholeheartedly that like all the Universes Beyond stuff is so riddled with that story of like, it feels like, I mean, they say this on the recent episode of Pack One Slick Ones, it feels like an advertisement. It feels like this was made to sucker people into buying it in a direct sense, right? Obviously, all Magic cards, in some way, depending on if you have a Marxist view of the game of Magic, they're all made to sell product, right? They're all meant to like advertise themselves to you. But it feels so much more on the nose, so much more sort of part of its like DNA that it is meant to be like a shallow cash grab, basically.
Yeah, they're not trying to tell a news story. They're just trying to get people to say, look, I understand that. That's my thing and your thing. Great.
So we agree. Let's not even talk anymore about Final Fantasy, right? Who cares?
Great.
Whatever. One of the things he specifically mentioned in the State of Design was that he thought this past year they did a really good job making sets that felt like original Magic sets, and they referenced specifically Bloomburrow and the return to Tarkir Dragonstorm in this little snippet. He also specifically said that he thought they did a really good job making worlds that were not thin, that they responded to the feedback that came, I think really that peaked around Outlaws at Thunder Junction, the sort of,
Definitely, yeah.
This is just Magic with a cowboy hat on, where it was like just the thinnest, shallowest, like aesthetic skin with no actual depth and interest to it and no real world building, that I think is what you're describing as like, oh, it's just tropes now, right? Like, there's not actually any real world building here. It's just like, you know, dumb skinning of things, which, to your point, might as well be Universes Beyond. It might as well be Universes Beyond the Western, you know, trope. Universes Beyond the, you know, Mad Max trope or whatever. But he feels, from this article, that Bloomburrow and Tarkir Dragonstorm and even Duskmourn were examples of them doing a great job making sets that felt like original Magic and that were not thin-skinned versions of tropes. Does that feel true to you?
It doesn't, but I want to recognize my deep biases here, and maybe I've just already been too poisoned that I haven't been willing to give those sets the attention they deserve to, like, appreciate that depth. But yeah, I mean, it does feel like, okay, cute animals. It's like, well, might as well just be Redwall, the set, right?
If it had been a Redwall Universes Beyond set, then It would look maybe exactly the same, except the characters would be named like whatever a Redwall character is.
Sure.
I read so many of those books, I remember nothing.
Nothing at all. It's all
gone right through my head.
I remember the Rats of Nim much more. But yeah, I mean, if you had even told me like, oh yeah, this was supposed to be a Redwall set, and then 3 months before it released, that would be too tight timeline. But soon before
3
it was
months before
released,
the files were locked in.
The like licensing fell through, and they're just like, well, now it's just generic cute animals. I wouldn't be shocked. Like it's not an unbelievable thing. Something else that he mentioned in the article, which is maybe interesting, is he did call out specifically that some of the very direct call-outs, I think especially in Spooky House is what it's called.
Duskmorn.
In Duskmorn, were just a little bit too on the nose. And it's like, okay, well, you just put this character that is clearly just a reference to the specific movie on a card, and people were not quite into that. I have sort of mixed feelings about that, because I sometimes will look at like Amonkhet or the Theros sets where they're clearly making explicit references. They're like, oh yeah,
Illyrios
here's the collection of gods. Yeah, here's Illyrios. Like, wouldn't I be more interested in it if it was actually just Narcissus, or instead of Heliod, we just had Zeus? Because then it would be not only an opportunity to play this game that I love and enjoy, allegedly, instead it would be also an opportunity for me to learn a little bit about history and mythology.
Is Zeus Heliod?
Isn't he?
I don't know. I'm asking you.
Or Apollo. I guess he's more Apollo.
Keranos is the one throwing all the bolts, but I know that that's like a very shallow interpretation of who Zeus is.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Maybe that's not it. Narcissus is a better example.
Narcissus is definitely Illyrios.
On the nose. I don't know. How do you feel about that? Do you think it would be better if they actually just tried to replicate things more literally, or do you think that there's something to the fact that they have to be kind of oblique in doing their own spin on things?
I think the spin is nice, and I think when it's at its best, that sort of spin makes the cards more compatible with Magic's world more broadly. To your point, something like Redwall, or let's take Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is basically the same high fantasy setting as Magic already. Like, there's no reason any Lord of the Rings card shouldn't fit exactly with what Magic feels like. It should fit perfectly on vibes. But I think in some cases, things were so directly lifted that it's just like, oh, it has that sort of stink on it now. It has that stink of a crossover, a
Magic
a
in 2025. It's got a certain stink.
It's got that stink on it of a corporate, cash grab that it just wouldn't have if you would just called this the cycling troll instead of the troll of Khazad-dûm or whatever.
I mean, that's true. Something I did appreciate about the Lord of the Rings set, and that was last year, so we shouldn't dwell on it too much, but the fact that they were pulling much more from the books, and there were very few instances where it was just like, oh yeah, this is clearly a frame lifted from the movies. Those felt much more clunky to me.
Yes,
but mostly it wasn't that. Mostly
it was mostly not that. Yeah.
Sort of their own interpretation of the books.
So yeah, I don't know. For me, I think it shows good self-awareness of you. I think that you are just personally, for other reasons, just kind of over Magic in a lot of ways, which is fine. But I don't think you can blame all of that on the direction of the game. You can blame a lot of it on that. But I do think that if Bloomburrow had come out 5 years ago, when you were maybe at your peak investment in what the game was, I think you would have loved that set. I think it's entirely possible that would have been one of your favorite sets, possibly. And to me, Bloomburrow, and especially the Tarkir Dragonstorm, definitely felt like classic Magic. I mean, classic in the sense of going back to original Tarkir, which is not classic in the earliest days of the game, but it felt like it was a set that could have been made 5 years ago before this sort of change in perspective kind of happened, this shift. Now, Aether Drift to me was a miss flavor-wise. I think the attempt at Race World was kind of interesting, but maybe a little bit of a stretch outside of what Magic traditionally is. So that's an example of one that kind of missed for me, but missed still within the sort of range of in the same way that I don't know what's a good example that I really liked Ravens of Ixalan. I thought flavor-wise, Kaladesh was also not for me, for example. Kaladesh and Aether Drift seem to me to be similar distances from what I perceive as the core identity of Magic. And then obviously the sort of elephant in the room here is Foundations, which I loved. Foundations was fantastic, and I think obviously speaks to, classic baseline foundational Magic, and was really successful in that regard. And also, to me, seemed like it was a pretty successful product. I mean, he mentions in the set that maybe the draft was a little more shallow than other sets, which I'm not even sure I entirely buy. It seems to me like that would be the thing you would blame first if there was some slightly less success of that limited format. You'd be like, oh, it's probably because it was not as deep or rich, which I'm actually not sure I fully believe. I think maybe there's something else to blame there, and it's just easy to say, oh, well, these are simple cards, so that wasn't ever going to be successful. Either way, I think those sets were a great return to some of the things that I love most about Magic, and I'm like you. I'm also just kind of checked out of the game. And again, some of that is for reasons having to do with the game, and some of that is for reasons having to do with me just not wanting to put as much time into it or like be as invested. But I think it's important to recognize that, because I don't think we can look at last year's sets and say overall, like, wow, this was a descent into like Universes Beyond bullshit. Now next year we can say that for sure, but
I think so. Yeah,
but
I mean,
looking back-
we're on the precipice.
well, so here's the other thing I want to talk about. We've already alluded to the episode of the Pack One Slick Ones, which was about figuring out how to enjoy Magic in this era that we're currently in. And safe to say that episode was also extensively critical of Universes Beyond and what it means for the game, what it means to be engaged with the game. They referred to Spider-Man specifically, which I think it's pretty safe to say from where we sit now recording this on Sunday, September 28th, that it seems like this set is going to be really not that successful. Certainly compared to Final Fantasy, certainly compared to Lord of the Rings, it has been received much less warmly, and people are pretty down on it. They refer to it in that episode as like, oh, this is Magic's flop era, which was really interesting to hear them talking about that right on the heels of reading Mark Rosewater's article about how Magic is the greatest it's ever been. We're selling more products than ever. Our design is the best it's ever been. We're making the best Magic sets we've ever made. And they sort of were like, oh yeah, it's just a flop era. We're just making bad stuff now, and we'll just like, we'll come out of it at some point. I do think that this is an interesting inflection point where previous Universes Beyond stuff has been mostly very successful. I mean, the first big product was Warhammer 40K, which was now 3 years ago, and that was overall pretty well received. And we're now living in the world where like the reception of 40K would be directly influencing what we're currently seeing actually coming out of R&D, like Spider-Man. They were probably still making Spider-Man when 40K was released, and like that probably influenced the amount of resources that Spider-Man got or whatever. And then Lord of the Rings came out, a year later, and that was, or a year and a half later, and that was massively successful. And I think what we see lined up for the next year and a half of the Star Trek set, the Avatar: The Last Airbender set, the other Universes Beyond stuff that I'm forgetting that I'm sure is also in the pipeline, that to me seems like a byproduct of the success of Lord of the Rings. But I think this golden goose is already dead, basically. Like, I do think that Spider-Man is kind of an indication that things have maybe turned a little bit on what Universes Beyond is. And people are really excited about some of the, like, honestly, like, Warhammer 40K, and you have to say Lord of the Rings is like a dream collaboration for Magic the Gathering. If you were to like explain the Universes Beyond program and be like, what is your dream IP to make Magic cards for? It has to be top of the list for almost everybody to be Lord of the Rings, right?
I mean, that's literally what Mark Rosewater said on an episode
Yeah.
of Drive to Work. He was like, yeah, we had everybody in a room, and everybody said unanimously, obviously Lord of the Rings, but that would be hard to do, and then they did it. So,
Yeah.
like, great. Kudos to them for that.
And then it's clear that Final Fantasy has a huge following, bigger than I was aware of. I'm totally checked out of video games now, and it's clear that like I did love Final Fantasy as a kid. I have very fond memories of Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VIII were the ones I played the most of. I also, as an older person, went back and played 4 and 5, which are ones I have fond memories of too. So like I've played a lot of Final Fantasy in my life, but I found nothing for the Universes Beyond Final Fantasy set. Like maybe if you're younger and are more invested in like Final Fantasy 15 or whatever the heck they're on now, then it feels more relatable to you. Like, I love chocobos. Chocobos are a thing that, like, I used to draw all the time as a kid, and I feel nothing about having a chocobo on a Magic card. Like, it just does nothing for me. But that might be my unique sort of...
Your particular brand of cynicism?
My particular strong aversion. I was hanging out last night with a friend and her kid, who's 6 years old, and I was actually showing him some General Apathy videos, which is that bug channel that I sent you.
Oh, right,
It's got a weird name. It's called General Apathy, but it's just this entomologist.
Look at what it means to not care about stuff. Here's a video about not caring.
It's just this entomologist that walks around like, the rainforest in Colombia or the like sand dunes at night in Oman and just picks up every bug and like animal he sees and tells you everything about it in like honestly a pretty flat tone, which I really am drawn to because so many things on YouTube now are like, hey, welcome to the bug channel.
Oh,
look at this guy. Wow, he's got
slow
big tiny
down.
claws. Like
That's
it's
too
like
much.
everyone's like Mr. Beasting it up. And this guy's just like, oh, look, it's blah, 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 blah. This was first identified in this year, and it's got this shape on the back of its carapace, and look at this fungus growing on it. He's just talking about it in like the flattest way possible.
Funguses.
My point is, I was showing this 6-year-old these videos, but at their house, they don't have a YouTube Premium account, because why would they? And so there was like an ad every like 2 minutes. And actually, here's something, I've not seen YouTube with ads in years because I've got YouTube Premium. But like, there's tons of ads now that are just literally 5-second ads, and it's just like, Huggies, put diapers on your baby. The ad is over.
Very direct.
It's like, but anyway, he had the remote and he was like skipping the ads, and every time he would get to the point where he could skip the ad, didn't skip it. I was like, skip, Owen, press skip it, Owen. And he was like, why? I'm like, because you're not supposed to look at advertising. Never fall for an advertisement. It's a total trick. And he was like, why? He's like, this stuff's cool. Why would I not fall for it? I'm like, I tried to explain to a 6-year-old why You should strongly resist all attempts to be advertised to, which is just to say that, yes, my brain is uniquely anti-advertising pilled. And so when I see anything that I feel like is cynically trying to appeal to me on some like target demographic level, I am like instantly turned off. And so that's maybe why I have no feelings when I see a chocobo on a Magic card. Maybe there's lots of people that are 37 years old that, grew up drawing chocobos in their sketchbook that were really thrilled about this and brought them back to Magic.
I mean, according to the numbers, yes, absolutely.
Where was I going with this? Anyway, so I do think that Spider-Man was not that successful. I think Avatar has a lot of potential. That's a property that people are really affectionate about and that seems a little more compatible with Magic as a world than certainly Peter Parker and Spider-Man, which seems crazy to try and make compatible with Magic.
Yeah, I mean, that's something else that I'm sort of not surprised by. Something that's becoming evident about my understanding of the world is that I
have no idea what's popular.
I have no idea what's popular. And the fact
I love that about you. It's one of the many things I love about you.
I don't have any idea. So
Avatar is very popular.
Isn't Spider-Man a more known thing than...
No.
But maybe it doesn't have the same fan base, even if it's more like recognizable as something like Final Fantasy.
Average like Zoomer, I think it's very reasonable in America the average Zoomer might know more about Avatar than Spider-Man. Like, they would know Spider-Man exists in the way that, like, I don't know, that, like, the Model T exists, but, like, are not,
sure.
Like, it's like, oh, it's a thing my parents heard about or whatever. Like, people used to like Spider-Man, sure, it's a thing in the world. I don't think there's anywhere near as much excitement about that amongst younger generations compared to something like Avatar The Last Airbender or Final Fantasy or whatever.
I mean, and to your point, I'm also learning how much I have no idea what Spider-Man is. Like, I thought he was just your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man who would fight crime, but gently. But instead, it's like Spooderman 3000, and he's got huge muscles and is teleporting. And I'm like, what's going on in here?
You gotta have big muscles. That's very important.
I thought that was his whole thing. Is he was just like a
no. He becomes super. He can shoot webs from his hands.
I thought those were not even real. He installed them himself. Also, aren't there like a whole bunch of different
Yeah, I don't know Iron Man now. He gets bit by a radioactive spider and he gets superpowers.
That's not real.
You're having my reaction now to all fiction. That's how I feel reading any fiction book. You just made all that up. That's not real at all. Anyway, it seemed like taken as read on this episode of Pack One Slick Ones that like, oh, we're just in Magic's flop era. No one's going to like this stuff. And I am not sure it's going to be the case, but I wouldn't be surprised if, as I said, we are like at the inflection point, and like the inflection point in Magic always is, it's going to be 3 years until we see the changes to how design and development works based on the changes in reception. Like, let's say that Spider-Man flops, Avatar: The Last Airbender flops, Star Trek flops. If these all flop, we still have another year and a half of that stuff coming before we will start to see people having said maybe back off on the Universes Beyond stuff. Honestly, maybe even more, because I imagine these take more time to negotiate with these like third-party owners of IP. There's probably additional time baked in.
You said IP, gross.
I mean, look, I don't care about it, but that's what it is in this sort of context. Yeah, I don't know. I think we're kind of stuck in this world for a little while, but I do think that I would be surprised if some other Universes Beyond product topped either Lord of the Rings or Final Fantasy anymore. I think that's going to be the peak of Universes Beyond, is my read.
I mean, I'm not going to be surprised because I would have guessed Lord of the Rings. I would have guessed that Lord of the Rings.
I guess Lord of the Rings is the most popular Universes Beyond set ever. Universes Beyond strong bad. When?
God, no, thank you. No thanks.
Universes Beyond Homestar Runner. Universes Beyond, I think you should leave. Universes Beyond Documental.
Coffin flops.
Yeah, it's a world.
So we just talked about a bunch of stuff that he didn't actually really address that much in the article, except to say that like people are still mad about Universes Beyond, and they should chill out, and they mostly are chilling out. But I wonder...
Okay, that's the one thing I did want to call out, is that to me was an obvious example of bias or logical fallacy, where he's like, people are still complaining about Universes Beyond, but less and less over time. And it's like, yeah, because maybe the people that were complaining about
the red
it just
dots on
literally...
the
It's always the red dots. It's a classic red dots in the airplane situation. Yeah, all the people that were complaining about it just have left. And so you've done a good enough job of alienating them. If you just continue to make Universes Beyond product and you keep polling your customers in 5 years, yeah, they're going to love that stuff because you will have selected out everybody that did not like Universes Beyond. And that is maybe not your goal, Mark. Just saying.
Maybe not, but maybe it is.
I mean, he's a... What's the name for somebody that like it's like a gentler form of bootlicker? I think it's like Toady, right? For like you're like a representative of like a bigger idea.
He is the Boots.
He's not the Boots, brother. I hate to break it to you. Let's have a little bit of Marxist analysis. He is not the Boots. He is a guy that works for the Boots, and the Boots are the stakeholders and shareholders of Hasbro. That's the Boots. Anyway, he's just going to do whatever he can to sell more Magic because that's his job title, basically. And so people should not expect anything else of him because that's not what he's going to do. If you want somebody that cared about the game, then you should look at Richard Garfield, who left immediately and said, y'all are going to mess this up. And they didn't as a product, but in many ways they may have as a sort of, creative piece of art, as in a creative endeavor. What were we saying? Red dots on the airplane.
No, I think that about covers it.
Covered it, yeah. Are you excited for the new Lorwyn set?
That's a great question.
Kind of hard to argue that Lorwyn is not a very unique Magic IP. You could look at Tarkir, which I think is also a pretty good example of pretty deep world building, and say, oh, they're borrowing so much from this sort of like the people of Mongolia and Bhutan and Nepal and the steppes and the nomadic cultures and stuff. Like, sure, they're borrowing a lot of that, but also that's just kind of feels a lot more close to like just vague inspiration than just, copy paste and change the colors or whatever, which is maybe what you feel about some of these more thin areas.
That's true. I
What
mean,
do you think about Lorwyn, though?
Lorwyn also has like a lot of inspiration from a lot of Celtic traditions, is my understanding. And it feels much more original to Magic because I'm just not familiar with that mythology to the same degree as, say, Greek mythology. I don't know. I feel like I really enjoyed Lorwyn because it was a place without humans, which I know was something that they really struggled with in the original Lorwyn set, was that people just like looking at other people. And so having a set that had no people
me
in
on
it.
a card.
Yeah.
I'm that guy.
Turns out that's important. People want to see things that are like themselves.
Reflected in their art.
That is important in so many ways. But I kind of like just being this little fantasy world where there's no humans. I also felt like it lended itself to a much more creative art style where there wasn't necessarily just, things that are trying to be photorealistic, but things that were much more filigree and painterly and less abstracted. Yeah. So I'm curious how much they do more of that. I don't know. I mean, it's a set that I didn't play. It was like the original Lorwyn set was long before my time playing Magic, but it's always one of the sets that I'm like, ooh, that looks cool. Oh yeah, it's from Lorwyn. And I even sought out a bunch of mostly Lorwyn basic lands from a basic land box because they were the most beautiful.
For your retail limited basic land set, which you use all the time.
I use it last time I played a wacky draft 6 months ago. I don't know. So it's in some ways, this coming year of Magic is targeted at me. It's
here's just that one set, really.
But also Star Trek. In theory, I would be the person that's
honestly, I don't think
that's
so.
Targeted
here's
at.
the thing. Look, we both enjoy the Star Trek television products. I think they are good
television products.
I think they are good
the
TV.
show. We like the show.
I think they are good TV shows, but we are not like Trekkies. You and I would not dress up as anybody from Star Trek. You and I would never dream of hanging anything on our walls that had anything Star Trek on it at all. We're just honestly not the kind of people to become fans of anything. You're just a fan of rocks. You're a fan of rocks and shapes. And the only reason you're able to be a fan of those is because nobody has officially commercialized rocks and shapes enough to ruin it for you. The Crystals people got close, but you didn't let them.
The which people?
The Crystals people.
The Crystals
got
people.
close to commercializing rocks in a way that almost made you not like rocks anymore. We're just not fans of things.
Birds. I like birds.
Okay, we are not fans of products.
Yeah.
We honestly, I think, kind of reject fan culture. And I think it's a big part of the identity of this show is that as much as we play Magic, we are not Magic fans, really, in the same sense. You would never wear a shirt with a mana symbol on it.
No, I don't think so.
No. I think it's just because you and I, due to some, either ontological or phenomenological, aspect of our creation, just reject that kind of relationship to media and instead try and pick what we like out of stuff instead of just being this is my thing. We don't really have a thing that is our thing.
I mean, I think I have a couple of things that are my thing, but they are definitely not associated
Shapes
with
and rocks.
Yeah, noodles, cooking. I feel like you could say he's a cooking guy. That's sort of a thing. But as soon as it becomes, a commercial product, as soon as it's Rachel Ray, I'm that sucks. As soon as it becomes Dorito with crossover of whatever, Mountain Dew Code Red, Jello, crazy goop. I'm that's gross.
Yeah, you like cooking, but you do not like the cooking product sphere or the cooking content sphere. You would hate watching any cooking thing on YouTube. It would make you want to blow your brains out.
Possibly. I mean, there's some good ones.
So there's always some ones if we dig deep enough. For the most part, the most popular cooking stuff on social media or you would just hate. I think it's just because we're not fans of things, mostly.
It is funny to me, literally the first set of Secret Lair things, there were 6 different things, and one of them was the sort of Audubon-style bird collection, and I was that's super cool. I get that they're going to have to widen the bell curve, and there's going to be a bunch of stuff that's really not going to be for me, but the more they widen that bell curve, the more stuff that will be for me, which is like, hey, put a real bird on it. The Strix wasn't a Strix. I'll take small issues with that, but like, sure, it looks like a real
one
bird.
job.
And it's funny that they didn't widen the bell curve in the direction that I found appealing really at all. And now that maybe they are with Star Trek, I'm also just like, no, never mind. I was wrong. I don't know my own experience. I'm wrong about me.
Oh, boy. Well,
and that's how we feel about Magic in 2025.
do you have anything else to say about the State of Design 2025 article?
Yeah, sure. Let's do lightning round. I agree. Omens looked exactly like adventures. What were you thinking? You've been going crazy with just different card frames that work in different ways, and that's difficult for me as a Cube player.
It's the kind of thing where, like, we talk all the time about how it is so easy with the retrospect to, like, say something doesn't make sense. I mean, the example I give often is that, you know, the first CubeCon, you had to register your entire pool with pencil and paper, and they tried to run the entire thing as a timed draft, and it's like, that obviously was never going to work. Like, that's not how these Cube events should be run. And over time, we've sort of figured out how it works, and now it feels obvious. Of course you run a Cube event like this. With retrospect, it seems obvious that those Omen card frames were never going to work, and I feel like it should have been obvious at the time, too.
Yeah,
I feel like this is an example.
This is not a retrospect kind
Well,
of situation.
look, I'm asking, like, are you and I falling prey to that retrospect bias now, where, like, if we had been in the room, we wouldn't have seen that either, but it seems so problematic.
Oh, I mean, that was our first question was, don't these look exactly like adventures, but they're different?
They function completely differently.
Anyway, I agree that the mechanics in Bloomborough felt friendly, and that was cool. That's nice.
I listened to the podcast about this, and they mentioned that originally, mechanically, they had a sacrifice theme in one of the, like, you know, animal kinds, one of the color combinations in Bloomborough, but then they realized that in combination with Offspring, that meant that the best thing to do was just to make babies and sacrifice babies. And he was like, yeah,
maybe don't.
That kind of doesn't really fit our goals overall, to have the best thing to be to make a bunch of babies and sacrifice them to your resource engines.
But instead, we have frogs that bounce in and out of play, and rats that are sneaky, and otters that like to cast spells. So that was all very flavorful. I like that. Rabbits that want more rabbits. That's it. That's all my thoughts.
You agree that
scrolling
agree they screwed up the Omen card frame, and you agree that they got a couple things right about Bloomborough, but you still didn't like it anyway.
Yeah.
We're just not Magic's target market anymore, which is
I guess
fine.
that's really true.
We talked about this years and years ago on, I don't think it was a State of the Design episode. I think it was our, like, year in review episodes, which are partially about the game, but more largely about, like, us and the podcast and, like, our relationships to the game in general. And I remember us saying that, like, something I felt at the time was that the thing that was dying and that I was going to miss the most was being a Magic player, being something that was even remotely unifying. That, like, I can meet another Magic player and know that we shared at least something in common, and that there was some shared interest we could speak to. And that, I think at the time I was talking about, like, God knows what, something that probably feels mundane by, you know, Dwight Schrute Secret Lair standards, but was something that felt like it was not the game I knew and loved. And I was just like, honestly, it was probably Commander, where I was just like, yeah, people that come into Magic and only know Commander, and that's what Magic is to them. It's like, we just
What
don't...
are the normal cards to play with? Soul Ring, obviously. That's a normal card.
We just don't have any overlap in, like, what we find interesting about this game. And so the inherent broadening of the customer base and trying to welcome more and more players into the fray just meant that what it meant to be a Magic player was lost all identity and meaning. And final reference to the Pac-Man Silkwins episode, Jane mentioned in that episode that she remembers when she used to look forward to spoiler season. And when she said that, I was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I also used to look forward to spoiler season.
Anything done that day.
I also used to look forward to that. And much like Jane, I'm so far from enjoying spoiler season now. It feels like with every spoiler season, I feel like I'm just, like, clenching my teeth, hoping they don't ruin something or, like, you know, just kind of mess something up that's going to ruin my, like, relationship to the game in some way. I think we got to own that, like, some of that is just us changing as people, and some of it is the game changing. But yeah, that thing that I remember talking about however many episodes ago about just the fact that, like, what it meant to be Magic player was changing, and the thing that I cared about was dying, it's just dead now. So, okay, we just live in a world now where, like, yeah, I don't have anything in common with the average Magic player.
Yeah.
And I can maybe explain what Cube is if they've heard of Retail Draft, which a lot of them haven't, or it's a thing that they are aware of but would never do because they're playing Commander and they only care about whatever Universes Beyond product. But yeah, it's just like the game is a huge tent now, and I just have to be content being in a little corner of that tent instead of trying to see some sort of community in the bigger tent in general.
I feel complicated about that because that is another thing that people will often cite if it's not, look, Magic is making so much money, therefore it is successful. They'll say, well, we'll bring new people into the game.
I don't care.
And I
don't like people.
I don't want to be saying, like, no, we should be more exclusive, we should be keeping people out, especially because Magic has had a very not diverse player base for so long.
There's a huge difference between keeping people out versus not actively seeking to make it bigger at all costs, you know?
Yeah, but I also agree. It's like I don't necessarily want to introduce myself as a Magic player to people because one of two things will happen. It's the like, oh yeah, what's new in Magic? I don't know, Spider-Man. Or it's, oh yeah, I play Magic too. Aren't you excited about Spider-Man? No.
Yeah.
Not really. And I think that sums it up.
Shame I can't use that intro to Annie Hall as a introduction to this episode because of all of
He's a bad guy.
Woody Allen's problematic everything. But yeah, I don't want to be part of a club that would have me as a member.
Does that not predate Woody Allen by a lot?
He's probably referencing something, but I know it from the intro to Annie Hall. But I guess also it's kind of not even what we're saying because I don't want to be part of a club that would have anybody.
I don't want to be
like if you would have anybody as a member
don't
with
be part
no
of a club.
I don't want to be part of a club. End sentence. I fixed it. I fixed it for you. All right, on that bombshell, that brings us to the end of this episode of Lucky Paper Radio. Thank you all so much for tuning in. All the music for this show is produced by DJ James Nasty, and the show is edited by Matthew. Thank you, Matthew, for all the cute little things you've been putting in the episodes that I do listen. I listen and I get to hear the Balatro pack opening sound or whatever that you dropped in there, which I'm really enjoying. If you want to support the show, you can check us out on Patreon, where we raise some money to pay Matthew, first and foremost, and also to do other cool, interesting Magic projects. I got some exciting news coming soon-ish with regards to a certain playmat that lots of people really wanted and couldn't all get, and I get emails about every single week, especially since it was in that Risk Studies video. People constantly email me about it. That's maybe coming back in some form or another soon, so check that out. And that's all possible because there's a little bit of money to throw around now because of the Patreon. So that makes us comfortable taking some risks that otherwise might be hard to take. You can also support the Cube Fellowship, which is our attempt to make the Cube world a better and brighter place by making sure that the Cube world's best and brightest can attend in-person events where community can actually be fostered and celebrated. All the Magic Cards are produced by Wizards of the Coast, and this podcast is produced by Thinking Really Hard About Magic Cards and then speaking into microphones about it. Anthony, thank you for the gift of podcast and for the gift of podcast. For the gift of...
You're welcome for the gift of podcast.
Thank you for the gift of friendship and for the gift of Cube. I will never thank you for the gift of podcast.
Thank you for the gift of just, have the space to vent about what this last year of Magic has been.
I don't think we vented that much.
I think we mostly just did venting, but that's okay. You're entitled to your experience, which you may or may not be an expert at. We don't know.
Some people will definitely hear it as venting because they're primed to, but I think it was an interesting analysis.
Interesting and thoughtful analysis, yeah. That's it.
Hey, no, I didn't say thoughtful.